The coffee had gone cold 2 hours ago, but I barely noticed. My eyes tracked across the monitor, displaying protein folding sequences that had consumed the last 18 months of my life. The algorithm was finally working. Predictive accuracy had jumped to 94.7% in the latest test run. My hands trembled slightly as I saved the data to the secure server, then made 3 backup copies on the encrypted drives in my desk drawer. Still playing with your little science project? I looked up to find my brother Marcus leaning against my home office doorframe, that familiar smirk plastered across his face. He'd let himself in using the spare key I'd given him for emergencies 3 years ago and apparently never returned. It's not a game, Marcus. This is my work. I minimized the windows on my screen reflexively. Years of dismissal from my family had trained me to protect what mattered. Right. Your groundbreaking research. He made exaggerated air quotes. Mom told me you're still doing your biology thing in the spare bedroom. When are you going to get a real job? I bit back the response that wanted to emerge. Marcus worked in commercial real estate sales and considered anything outside of immediate monetary transactions to be a hobby rather than legitimate work. The fact that I'd spent 6 years completing my PhD, another 4 in postdoctoral research, and now ran my own consulting laboratory apparently meant nothing to him. I have a real job. I've explained this before. Sure. He wandered into my office uninvited, picking up a framed photo of me receiving my doctorate. Dad always said you'd outgrow this phase. 34 years old and still playing in a laboratory. It's kind of sad, honestly. The familiar ache settled into my chest. Our father had passed away 3 years ago, never having acknowledged that my research had any value. He'd been a construction company owner like Marcus now was, and had always viewed my chosen field as impractical daydreaming. Was there something you needed, Marcus? I'm in the middle of something time-sensitive. Actually, yeah. He set down the photo and turned to face me, sliding his hands into his pockets. I'm a little short on cash this month. The business has some unexpected expenses. I was hoping you could spot me $5,000. I closed my eyes briefly. This happened every few months. Marcus lived in a house twice the size of mine, drove a BMW and took his family on elaborate vacations, but somehow was perpetually short on cash. I'd lent him money 4 times in the past 2 years. He'd repaid exactly none of it. I can't this time, Marcus. I have equipment purchases coming up and... Equipment for your pretend laboratory? He laughed. Come on, Sophia. What could you possibly need expensive equipment for? Just borrow stuff from whatever university is letting you use their space. I'm not affiliated with the university anymore. I have my own practice, my own laboratory, my own clients. And the equipment is essential for clients. He laughed harder. Who's paying you to play scientist? This is exactly what I'm talking about. You live in this fantasy world where your little hobby is some kind of legitimate business. Meanwhile, I'm running an actual company with real employees and real money, and you can't even help out your own brother. I stood up, moving to close my office door, a not-so-subtle hint. I've helped before, Marcus. Multiple times. And I need my resources for my own work right now. His expression darkened. You know what? Fine. Be selfish. But don't come crying to the family when you finally realize you've wasted your entire life on this nonsense. He left without another word, and I heard the front door slam a moment later. I stood there for a long minute, breathing slowly, reminding myself that his opinion didn't define my worth. Then I returned to my desk and continued working. The algorithm was beautiful. Elegant. And if my projections were correct, it would revolutionize protein structure prediction for drug development. 3 pharmaceutical companies were already in negotiation for licensing agreements. The patent applications had been filed 4 months ago through my attorney, covering not just the algorithm itself but 17 specific implementations and derivative processes. The total projected value, according to the IP lawyers, $4.2 million over the next 7 years, conservative estimate. But my family didn't know any of that. They never asked about my work in enough detail to learn about it. 2 weeks later, I arrived home from a consultation meeting with a biotech firm in Boston to find my office door open. My stomach dropped. I always locked it. Always. I rushed inside and immediately saw the disaster. Drawers pulled open. Papers scattered. My file cabinet's lock had been forced, the metal bent and scratched. And my desk drawer, the one where I kept the encrypted backup drives, hung open and empty. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and dialed Marcus. "Hey sis. What's up?" He sounded cheerful. "Relax. Marcus, were you in my house?" "Oh yeah. I stopped by yesterday. Used my key. You weren't home. Why were you in my office? Why is everything?" "I needed to grab some files." "No big deal." The world seemed to tilt slightly. "What files?" "Those research things you had. The drives with all your data on them. And some of the papers from your file cabinet." I couldn't breathe properly. "Marcus, what did you do with them?" "Sold them actually. You won't believe it. I found this guy online who buys technical data. Industrial research stuff. He paid me $8,000 cash. I know it's not much, but I figured since you weren't using them for anything real, it was just sitting there collecting dust. Consider it repayment for all those times you couldn't help me out." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. "You sold my research files?" "My encrypted drives." "Yeah, the guy said he works with overseas companies that need technical documentation for their development projects. He seemed legit, had a whole website and everything. Anyway, I thought you'd be happy. I got way more than I expected for some random biology notes. The guy said most of it was probably useless, but he'd pay for the drives anyway." "Marcus." My voice came out strangled. "Those weren't random notes. That was 18 months of proprietary research. Patent-protected algorithms. Confidential data covered under IP law. Do you have any idea what you've done?" He laughed. "Come on, don't be dramatic. It's not like you're some big pharmaceutical company. You're working out of your spare bedroom. How protected could it possibly be?" "I need the name of the person you sold them to. Right now." "Why? So you can embarrass yourself trying to get your precious files back?" "Sophia, just let it go. Maybe this is the universe telling you it's time to get a real career." "Marcus, I'm not joking. I need that information immediately." "Look, I don't even remember the guy's name. We met at a coffee shop, he paid cash, and that was it. It's done. Just accept it and move on." He hung up. I stood in my destroyed office, looking at the empty drawer, trying to process what had just happened. Those drives contained everything. Complete algorithm documentation. Test results. Implementation protocols. Client confidentiality agreements had been stored in that file cabinet. Research notes with specific pharmaceutical applications that were covered under NDAs worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in penalties if breached. And Marcus had sold them to some random person on the internet for $8,000. I pulled up my contacts and made 3 calls. First, to Rachel Kim, my intellectual property attorney. Then to David Chin, head of my patent enforcement team. Finally, to Special Agent Jennifer Morrison at the FBI's Cybercrimes Division. I'd worked with her office 2 years ago when a competitor had attempted to hack my servers. All 3 had the same reaction. Immediate alarm followed by rapid-fire questions. "Do not discuss this with anyone else," Rachel said firmly. "Not family, not friends. We're treating this as industrial espionage and IP theft. I'm filing emergency injunctions tonight." "I'm tracing the sale right now," Agent Morrison said. "If he met in person, there might be security footage. But Sophia, your brother may have committed several federal crimes. You understand that?" "I understand. This could result in criminal charges. Prison time. Are you prepared for that?" I looked at the empty drawer again. 18 months of work. Multiple client NDAs breached. $4.2 million in patent-protected intellectual property sold for $8,000 cash. Yes. I'm prepared. The next 3 days were a whirlwind. Rachel filed emergency protective orders with the patent office. David's team traced the encrypted drives through their hidden digital signatures. Even though Marcus had physically stolen them, they had tracking firmware that pinged whenever powered on. Agent Morrison's team identified the buyer through coffee shop security footage. A known industrial espionage broker who specialized in selling corporate secrets to overseas manufacturers. They arrested him 48 hours after Marcus made the sale. He rolled immediately, providing documentation of the entire transaction in exchange for a reduced sentence, which meant they had detailed evidence of exactly what Marcus had stolen and sold. I didn't tell my family any of this. I went about my normal routine. I responded to Marcus's texts about getting over it with brief, non-committal replies. When my mother called to tell me I was being ridiculous about some old files, I said simply that I was handling it through proper channels. Proper channels? Mom had scoffed. What does that even mean? Sophia, your brother needed money for his business. The least you could do is be understanding instead of making a big drama out of some papers. They weren't just papers, Mom. Well, they certainly weren't worth $8,000. Marcus said the man who bought them was probably just being kind. You should be grateful your research had any value at all. I'd ended that conversation quickly. On day 4, Agent Morrison called. We have enough for arrest warrants. Federal charges: theft of intellectual property, interstate transport of stolen property, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and violation of the Economic Espionage Act. The U.S. Attorney's Office is ready to proceed. Do you want to be present when we make the arrest? Where will you arrest him? He's scheduled to be at your mother's house tomorrow evening for dinner. We were planning to make the arrest there. Perfect timing, I thought. The whole family would be present. Yes. I'd like to be there. I arrived at my mother's house at 6:30 the following evening, just as planned. My sister Jenna's car was already in the driveway, along with Marcus's BMW and my Uncle Tom's truck. A regular family dinner just like the dozens we'd had over the years. Mom opened the door with a surprised smile. Sophia, I didn't know you were coming. How wonderful. Maybe you and Marcus can finally work out this silly argument about those files. Maybe, I said neutrally, stepping inside. The family was gathered in the living room. Marcus sat on the couch next to his wife, looking relaxed and confident. Jenna was scrolling through her phone while her husband chatted with Uncle Tom about football scores. Mom bustled back toward the kitchen, calling over her shoulder about dinner being ready in 15 minutes. Hey, Sophia. Marcus gave me that familiar smirk. Glad you decided to stop being childish about this whole thing. I actually did you a favor, you know. $8,000 for some old research notes? That's probably more than you'd ever make from them anyway. I sat down in the armchair across from him. You think so? I know so. Come on, be realistic. You're not exactly working for a major corporation. How much could your patents possibly be worth? He actually made air quotes again. The guy I sold them to probably just resold them for parts or something. It's not like there was anything actually valuable there. Jenna looked up from her phone. Wait, you're still upset about that? Marcus, I thought you said she was over it. I thought she was. Guess our little sister likes to hold grudges. I'm not holding a grudge, I said calmly. I've been handling it through the appropriate legal channels. Marcus laughed. Legal channels? What, you filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau? Sophia, just stop. You're embarrassing yourself. Actually, I said, checking my watch, I contacted the FBI's Cybercrimes Division, my IP enforcement legal team, and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District. They've spent the last 4 days building a federal case. The room went very quiet. What are you talking about? Mom emerged from the kitchen, wooden spoon still in hand. The files Marcus stole and sold weren't just old research notes. They were patent-protected intellectual property covered under federal law. The algorithms alone are valued at $4.2 million. The client data he accessed included confidential pharmaceutical research covered by NDAs worth hundreds of thousands in penalty clauses. And the person he sold them to is a known industrial espionage broker who resells corporate secrets internationally. Marcus's face had gone pale. You're bluffing. The buyer was arrested 3 days ago. He provided complete documentation of your transaction in exchange for a reduced sentence. Security footage from the coffee shop where you met confirms your identity. And the encrypted drives you stole had hidden tracking firmware. My legal team traced them the moment they were powered on. Sophia, this isn't funny, Mom said sharply. Stop trying to scare your brother over some silly files. I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm explaining what's about to happen. As if on cue, car doors slammed outside. Through the front window I could see 3 black SUVs pulling into the driveway. Marcus stood up abruptly. What is this? That, I said quietly, is the FBI. The doorbell rang. Mom looked at me, then at Marcus, then at the door. Sophia, what did you do? I didn't do anything. Marcus committed multiple federal crimes. I just reported them. The doorbell rang again, more insistently, followed by a firm knock and a voice. FBI. We have a warrant for Marcus James Sullivan. Marcus's wife grabbed his arm. Marcus, what is she talking about? This is insane. Sophia, call them off. Whatever you think I did. You stole $4.2 million worth of patent-protected intellectual property, I said, my voice steady. You violated federal IP law, the Economic Espionage Act, and multiple confidentiality agreements. You sold classified research data to a known criminal. And you did it for $8,000. Mom rushed to the door and opened it. 3 FBI agents stood on the porch, credentials already displayed. Behind them, I could see more agents moving around the perimeter of the house. Mrs. Sullivan? I'm Special Agent Jennifer Morrison. We have a warrant for the arrest of Marcus James Sullivan. She held up the document. This is ridiculous. Mom's voice was shrill. My son didn't do anything wrong. Ma'am, I need you to step aside. Agent Morrison and her team entered the house. Marcus backed up against the couch, his face now completely white. Marcus James Sullivan, you're under arrest for theft of intellectual property, interstate transport of stolen property, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and violation of the Economic Espionage Act of 1996. Agent Morrison's voice was professional, almost bored, as if she did this every day. You have the right to remain silent. Sophia. Marcus's voice cracked. Tell them this is a mistake. They were just some files. Just some research. Just some research valued at $4.2 million, Agent Morrison said, snapping handcuffs onto his wrists. Protected by 17 active patents and covered under federal intellectual property law. 17 patents? Jenna whispered. That's impossible, Uncle Tom said. Sophia works in her spare bedroom. Dr. Sullivan operates a private research laboratory and consulting practice, Agent Morrison corrected, emphasizing the doctor in a way that made Uncle Tom flinch. She holds multiple patents in protein structure prediction algorithms used by 3 major pharmaceutical companies. The intellectual property your nephew stole and sold is considered critical infrastructure under federal law. She turned back to Marcus. The U.S. Attorney has authorized me to inform you that you're facing up to 15 years in federal prison and up to $5 million in fines. The buyer you sold to is cooperating fully. We have security footage, financial records, and digital forensic evidence. Your attorney will receive full documentation tomorrow morning. Sophia, please. Marcus's voice was desperate now as the agents began to lead him toward the door. I didn't know. I thought it was just, I didn't know it was worth anything. You didn't ask, I said quietly. You never asked what I actually do. You just assumed it was worthless because it wasn't what you understood. Mrs. Sullivan, another agent said, addressing Marcus's wife, we have a warrant to search your residence as well. Evidence suggests some of the stolen materials may still be on your property. We'll need access within the hour. He started crying. Mom grabbed my arm. Sophia, stop this. He's your brother. You can't let them take him to jail over some misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, Mom. He broke into my office, forced open my locked file cabinet, stole my property and sold it to a criminal. Those are crimes. Federal crimes. But he didn't mean. He meant to steal my things because he decided they were worthless. He decided my work was worthless. My entire career was just a hobby to him. I pulled my arm free. I gave him every opportunity to take me seriously. All of you. For years. The agents were at the door now, Marcus in handcuffs between them. He looked back at me one last time. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I know you didn't. That was always the problem. They took him out to one of the SUVs. Through the window I watched them secure him in the back seat. The living room was silent except for Marcus's wife's crying. Finally Jenna spoke, her voice small. Sophia, what exactly do you do? I develop protein structure prediction algorithms for pharmaceutical applications. I consult with biotech firms on drug development processes. I hold 17 active patents with 8 more pending. I have contracts with 3 Fortune 500 pharmaceutical companies and 2 major research universities. But you work from home, Uncle Tom said weakly. I work from a private laboratory facility I built in my home, yes. The overhead is lower, which means I keep more of the consulting fees. Last year I grossed $840,000 in revenue. Mom sat down heavily on the couch. 800. The research Marcus stole represents about 5 years of that projected revenue. The NDAs he violated when he accessed my client files could result in additional lawsuit settlements totaling another $1 million in penalties. I'll likely recover some of that through civil court, but the damage to my professional reputation is harder to quantify. Agent Morrison had stayed behind while her colleagues left with Marcus. Dr. Sullivan, we'll need you to come to the field office tomorrow to provide a full statement. The U.S. Attorney will want to discuss your testimony for the grand jury. Of course. What time? 10 a.m. work for you? Perfect. She nodded to the room at large and left. I picked up my bag and headed for the door. Where are you going? Mom's voice was nearly a whisper. Home. I have work to finish. Sophia, wait. Please. We need to talk about this. We need to figure out how to help Marcus. I turned back to look at her. At all of them. Marcus broke federal law. There's nothing to figure out. He'll have a trial, and if he's convicted, which he will be because the evidence is overwhelming, he'll go to prison. That's how the justice system works. But he's family. And he treated me like my life's work was garbage. Like I was playing pretend. Like everything I've accomplished was worthless because he didn't understand it. I felt surprisingly calm. He had every opportunity to respect my career. To ask questions. To treat me like my work mattered. He chose not to. And then he chose to commit multiple felonies. Those were his choices. Jenna's husband cleared his throat awkwardly. For what it's worth, we had no idea you were doing so well. Why didn't you ever say anything? I tried. Many times. But when someone keeps dismissing everything you say as not being a real job, eventually you stop trying to explain. I left them sitting in stunned silence. The trial took 11 months to reach court. Marcus's attorneys tried everything. Arguing he didn't understand the value of what he'd taken, claiming I'd given him permission to access my office, suggesting the $4.2 million valuation was inflated. None of it worked. The federal prosecutor was thorough. She brought in expert witnesses from each of the 3 pharmaceutical companies I consulted for. They testified about the value of my algorithms, the breakthrough nature of my research, the competitive advantage my work provided. She showed the jury the patent documentation, the licensing agreements, the confidentiality clauses. And she walked them through exactly what Marcus had done. Breaking into a locked office, forcing open a locked file cabinet, stealing encrypted drives containing protected research, and selling that research to a known criminal for a fraction of its worth. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 8 years in federal prison and ordered him to pay $4.2 million in restitution, plus an additional $750,000 for violating the confidentiality agreements with my clients. Marcus will never be able to pay that amount. His house was seized as part of the asset forfeiture process. His business collapsed once news of his conviction became public. Apparently, commercial real estate clients don't trust convicted felons with their transactions. Mom tried to talk to me at the sentencing hearing. I wasn't unkind, but I was clear. Marcus had made his choices and these were the consequences. He's still your brother, she said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, I agreed. And I'm still the sister he stole from because he thought my career was worthless. Actions have consequences, Mom. That's what being an adult means. 18 months after Marcus's arrest, I received an email from a venture capital firm in San Francisco. They'd been following the coverage of the case. It had made headlines in several tech and pharmaceutical industry publications, and were interested in discussing investment opportunities for expanding my research laboratory. The meeting led to a $12 million series of funding round. I hired a team of 6 researchers, leased a proper laboratory facility, and expanded into 3 new areas of protein research. 2 of my new patent applications were fast-tracked due to their potential applications in cancer treatment development. My family doesn't call much anymore. Jenna sends the occasional text, usually around holidays. Mom leaves voicemails I don't always return. Uncle Tom sent a Facebook friend request I haven't accepted. I'm not angry with them. I'm just done trying to justify my worth to people who fundamentally never believed in what I do. Last month, one of my algorithms was licensed by a pharmaceutical company for use in developing a new class of Alzheimer's medications. The licensing fee alone was $2.7 million, with royalties projected to add another $8 million over the next decade. I thought about calling my family to share the news. Then I thought about years of, when are you going to get a real job, and stop playing scientist, and just some worthless research. Instead, I called my research team and took them out for a celebration dinner. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for their family to see their worth. I decided to stop waiting and just keep building something worth seeing. Marcus will be eligible for parole in 6 years. His attorney contacts mine periodically to discuss the restitution payments he'll owe when he's released. The $4.95 million judgment isn't going away. It will follow him for the rest of his life. Sometimes I wonder if he finally understands what he stole. If he's realized that his worthless research comments were about work that's now generating millions in revenue and potentially saving lives. But mostly I just focus on my work. The proteins don't care about family drama. The algorithms don't need validation from people who can't understand them. The science just works. And that's enough. My office door has a new lock now. Biometric with remote monitoring. The file cabinets are fireproof and digitally secured. My backup systems are redundant and encrypted with military-grade security protocols. And I had the spare key to my house changed. Fool me once, as they say. I'm not bitter. I'm just careful. And successful. And finally free from needing anyone's permission to consider my work legitimate. The research papers on my desk tonight represent another potential breakthrough. A new approach to protein folding that could revolutionize drug development timelines. 3 more companies are interested in early licensing agreements. The projected value is even higher than the last algorithm. I save my work to the secure server, check all the backup systems and lock my office door behind me. Some people are born into families that celebrate their success. Others have to build their validation from scratch, patent by patent, discovery by discovery, until the work speaks for itself so loudly that even the doubters can't pretend not to hear it. I built mine. And no one can take that away. Not even family.